How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Soul Ward. Let me check my audio real quick. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. So we're getting we're getting into our second stream. So excuse me, the tech's going to evolve as time goes. I'm not even in my full studio yet, but I'm looking forward to getting out to there. And about January is when I'll be in there. But tonight we're going to investigate some Eastern philosophy. There's a famous philosopher by the name of Alan Watts who is in quite a lot of popular media that you see when it comes to some of his motivational speeches that get caught up into dubsteps and techno music, kind of electronic music. So with that being said, I thought we'd just go ahead and jump right in. Now, last night we talked about Joel Osteen and evaluated his theology. Now, I have a seminary background. I've been in seminary for 8 years. I've worked as a pastor professionally. I've interned before that. Been in ministry for a long time. And that was my strength. I played it a little safe. Here I'm going to be challenged. I'm going to learn something new. And so I hope you guys will enjoy watching along with me. And hopefully we can all grow in a fresh perspective, and a popular one at that. If you have any questions or if you have any reactions, feel free to write them in the chat, and then we can take a moment and address some of the questions you guys bring up and just kind of react to this together. With that being said, let's go ahead and see what we're dealing with here.
Is what not to do, how not to use the mind, because it'll get you into deeper and deeper and deeper binds. You have to let it happen, just like you have to let yourself go to sleep. You can't try to go to sleep. You have to let yourself digest your food. You can't try to digest it. And so in the same way, you have to let yourself wake up. Become liberated. And when you find out, you see, that there isn't any way of forcing it, that for most people is the only way of getting them to stop forcing it. Because they won't believe when you tell them in the first instance, you've got to do this without forcing it. They'll say, well, it won't work, it won't happen, because I'm very unevolved. I'm just an ordinary human being. I'm just poor little me. And if I don't force it, nothing will happen. I have people who think that if they don't struggle and strain, they won't have a bowel movement, or whatever it is. They think they've got to do that work in order to make it happen. In other words, all that is based on lack of faith, not trusting life. And to get people to trust life who don't trust it, you have to trick them. They won't jump into the water, so you have to throw them in. And if they are very unwilling to be thrown in, they're going to take diving lessons, you see, in which they're going to go all through, they're going to read books about diving, they're going to do all the preliminary exercises for diving.
So I just want to say right off the get-go from my from my perspective, it's really similar to some of the theology that exists within Christianity. And that, again, that's just kind of my perspective that I've been growing up with, is like he says, it's not having faith, it's not trusting life. And that's the thing that I'll be talking about tomorrow, is that we get wrong, or a lot of Christians get wrong in Christianity, is they think that they have to earn God's love. They have to earn God's prosperity, God's wealth, right? They think that they can earn their way. And this is what we see in like what I've seen in the Catholic religion is, penance, and if you're not good enough, you go to purgatory and you have to work off your sins. But a preacher by the name of Judah Smith from Church Home, he says that our relationship with God should be intimate and organic. It should just naturally happen. Jesus preached, he said, I am the vine, you are the branches. This is how you'll know that you're in me, that you'll bear fruit. And Judah contrasted that and said, he said he walked a vineyard, and what he didn't hear was fruit. What does that sound? What's the vines growing fruit? So Jesus was saying, if you're in me, you're going to bear fruit naturally. And so Alan Watts here, he's saying that the way to let go to succeed at life, it seems like, I'm going to listen a little closer, is it should happen naturally. You should let it happen naturally. So my initial question is, how do we let ourselves? He says, let yourself. How do we let ourselves? That's what I'm going to be listening for.
Diving, they're going to stand on the edge of the diving board and inquire whether there's the right posture until somebody comes up beside and kicks them in the butt. And they're in the water. And it's also with this. It really is. So now the most amazing gamesmanship goes on in the whole domain of yoga and spiritual practice. You would be astounded. So, one of the games in all this is to find a little flaw in you, see? Everybody has a place where they can be jiggled a bit. Something they're a bit ashamed of, and so they think, does this person really know my secret? He's not saying anything because he's polite, but does he really see through me and know that somewhere are the awful awfuls and that I'm a little bit upsettable? This is all part of religious competition. If you go to the Roman Catholics and you've been psychoanalyzed, you see, they'll say, well, that's fine, but of course it's not nearly enough. That's all very well so far as it goes, but, or if you're a Roman Catholic and you go to a Buddhist outfit that's on a missionary basis, they'll say, yes, of course, through your Catholicism, you've learnt some of the basic virtues, but of course, Catholicism doesn't go anywhere near the heart of things, in that it doesn't have an elaborate system of meditation like we have. Then you go over to the Hindu school, and they say, yes, the Buddhists go to a certain point. They do attain a very, very high stage of realization, but there is nevertheless something higher than that, which they don't quite get. And you'll find this all round the world. Everybody claiming to have that little special extra essence which the others don't have. Now, why are they doing that? Are they all frauds? Are they all out to get you into their society? Sometimes, yes. But sometimes they're trying to see whether you fall for this, testing you out. This is upaya, skillful method. And if you become falling for that little extra special thing that's just supposed to be around the corner, then they've got you. Or rather, you've got yourself in the mix. And you have to work at that and work at that and work at that until you find out that you were being made a monkey of. But you were being made a monkey of because you could be made a monkey of. You hadn't really arrived where you are. You didn't have the nerve to be you.
So I think one thing that's interesting as I'm listening to this is he really struck close to home in a lot of things. One of the things I do is I go to various Bible studies from various churches around the valley where I'm currently at in Arizona. And I'll stop on in. It's a new group of guys, and I just kind of people watch, and I participate genuinely. I'm not there to, infiltrate them or anything. I use it for what it's used for, a Bible study. But I see a lot of this religious pretension, people wearing masks. It's what people call church masks, and so pretending like they have it all together. And Alan's pointing out they don't have it all together, and that's really hits close to home. And what's interesting though is someone who is again, like, been in seminary for many years, been in ministry, been a professional pastor. This tactic he's talking about testing people and seeing if you can trick them. It wasn't taught in my seminary, which was put on by Francis Chan, for those of you who know who that is. But I have other friends who come from Phoenix Seminary, other religious, prestigious places, and we've never sat around as people studying in seminary and gone like, "Hey, what do you think about that thing where we try to trick people and see if we can trick them?" It doesn't happen. So I don't know. That's interesting. Again, I'm not calling them wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just speaking from my perspective, and I'm reacting and I'm listening intently. Ender in Exile writes that you can find this in the Protestant denominations. And so that's an interesting point. Ender, if you can give me a little bit more, what specifically is this? I'll go back to listening, and then I'll be looking for your continued comment there. Let's listen a little closer, though. And Alan is way smarter than me, knows a lot more than me, so I want to definitely learn from him. So we'll keep listening on.
That is to say, to be the self. And so you had always to feel that there was something beyond that, a stage higher. See? So that's why, for example, Masonry is such a success. It has 33 degrees. And you know, you can go up that ladder and get higher and higher status. The more degrees, the merrier. There have been things that have invented hundreds of degrees, and they're an immense success. Because you can postpone it longer and longer, like Achilles overtaking the tortoise. He doesn't overtake it in the problem.
So it's interesting. What he's saying is the more levels a belief system has, and he's referencing the Masonry, which is another, I believe he's referring to the Freemasons, but I could be wrong. That's part of why I started the Soul Ward. It's to teach me as much, I'm a student, and I'm here to participate with other students. So I hope you guys all join this learning journey with me. But it seems like he's saying the more steps a religion or belief set has, the more viable it becomes. And that's really interesting. So he's saying like the Masonry has 30 plus steps, and so it's like, oh, you haven't arrived yet. Stay on. And so I'm thinking about when it comes to Scientology, as I've studied that a little bit, and cleansing the Thetans is what they do. And so it's like, you still got more to cleanse, so stay on board. So it's interesting perspective from Alan. Ender gives us a little bit more. So Ender, hi Ender, by the way. He says, find this in the Protestant denominations. He says this equals the something extra that the others don't have. Yeah, I like what you're putting out there. So I definitely see I see people say all religions are the same, and then I see people in religion say my religion is different, and so that's interesting. I'd love to hear Ender's Ender. I'd love to hear your points more on what are some of the extra things that you think you see in Protestantism, because I would love to react to those as well. While you write, we'll keep on listening.
Because we keep dividing the space between Achilles and the tortoise as he approaches the tortoise. What delays Achilles overtaking the tortoise is not Achilles, but our calculations about how he approaches it. We make the calculations more and more complicated as he gets nearer and nearer to the tortoise. It's only the calculations that put it off.
So what he's saying is he's referring Achilles and the tortoise. Now, I get the metaphor he's saying is that if something is divided to be closer to something, so you have the distance, right? Then you have the distance again, then you have the distance again, then you have the distance again. You're never going to get zero if you're dividing. So there's an infinite spectrum there, an infinite amount of closing in to this, but it's kind of like, pi, it'll just go on forever ad infinitum. So that's interesting. He's saying that religions are working this way. I really want to hear more about his take on why he thinks that and where he's going with this.
Achilles, in fact, runs right by. So in the same way, you can calculate yourself out of liberation. You can put it off indefinitely by inventing new degrees and new stages. But actually, when you get it, you don't get it. you suddenly see it. It happens instantly. It happens instantly whether you put in 30 years practice or whether you put in 3 minutes. It's the same. Suddenly it dawns on you that that's the way things are. Tattvamasi. Medieval society in the West, comparable to Hindu society, allowed people to check out of the game. It revered and encouraged hermits, monks, nuns, of various types of discipline. There's this difference, you see, for the West and India. You couldn't join the Brahmana caste, the priest caste, from some other caste. But in the European caste system, by becoming a priest or a cleric of any kind, you see, a cleric means simply a literate person, you could familiarize with any other caste once you're in that one. And so it was a wonderful way of rising in society. You could, from being a serf, go to being a priest, to being an archbishop, and consort with the nobility. It was the only way open to cross castes, you see. And because they were the literate people, it was through literacy and through universities founded by clerics that our caste system began to break. And we got the idea of choosing your own vocation and not simply following what your parents did. Now, I want to make an observation here about checking out of the game. This is not encouraged.
So, Alan is, wow, he's really hitting at something that is my core problem with organized religion and organized class-based systems. So I can see why this take is very popular. I think a lot of people are quoting a lot of this stuff without even realizing they're quoting it. You know, I'm not saying that they're ripping off Alan Watts. I'm just saying that he's thinking in a very similar vein of thought. I wanted to take a moment to read Ender's comment here. Different denominations having different dogmas that they took from Catholicism or throughout from Catholicism, or a different Orthodox practices, actresses, and then claiming that they do a better or non-denominational, saying that this type of Bible group does it better. Okay, yeah. So I think we see this, with case in point. You had the Catholic religion, and then you had the Western Orthodox Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox Catholicism. You had the iconoclasts with people in the Eastern religion or an Eastern Orthodox church were worshiping they taught that statues were like avatars of things. So if you had a statue of Jesus, you could pray better to Jesus. If you had a statue of Mary, you could pray better to Mary. So anyways, so even among Catholicism proper, there was contention there. In fact, actually, the Western Orthodox Church sent someone to take care of it from the Eastern Orthodox Church, and long story short, they ended up excommunicating each other, and arguing over who had the power to do so. But then, you have the 95 Thesis from Martin Luther, and you have the Protestant Reformation, and you say they're better than the Catholics, and then you had the Baptists, the Anabaptists, the rebaptizers as they were called, but and then now you have like Lutheran, Presbyterian, on and on, Baptist, and we see these factions of religion, each one saying, we do it better, we do it different. Ender, that's a fantastic point. I love, thank you so much for following up with the questions I asked, because I was like kind of tracking what you got, but now I believe I am understanding more what you're saying. And if I've got you wrong, please correct me and let me know. But yeah, and that falls in line with what Alan's saying is like, yeah, like join our team, join the dark side. We have cookies. So let's keep listening to Alan. And guys, if you're on, I see on the Discord server a few of you popping online, popping offline. at the end of this video, if some of you are interested, we can open up a voice channel and we can all discuss kind of what we've learned, what we thought. We can have some reactions. I'd love to hear you guys interact with us. That being said, let's, for now, just to help, the flow of processing, let's just keep listening on, and then at the end we can have kind of a voice chat about all of this. Hey, Ender says I'm on the nose. Thank you, Ender. I appreciate that I understand you and your perspective better. Let's listen a little bit more to Alan.
In contemporary society, because the Catholic Church and the Episcopalian Church are very powerful minorities, they can still support monasteries and even hermits. But you can't be one on your own without great difficulty. Firstly, because you're a poor consumer. See, around here we have a number of hermits. There's a guy out there building that boat, and he's essentially...
So I think what's important to also note, it just dawned on me, again, ever the student, right? It just dawned on me, this video is called The Social Game. So Alan is explaining to us the basis of, what I'm getting is the basis of the social game we all play. I love it. Let's learn some more. I'm learning a lot.
Actually, a non-joiner, a poor consumer, and the community, they live a lot along here. And they're not working class people. They are people who dropped out of college because they saw it was stupid. And they're that sort of people. We would call them perhaps beatniks. But you see, the city doesn't like it because they aren't owning the right sort of cars, and therefore the local car salesman isn't doing business through them. They don't have lawns, and so nobody can sell them lawnmowers. They hardly use dishwashers, appliances of that kind. They don't need them. And also they wear blue jeans and things like that, and so the local dress shops feel a bit put out having these people around. And they live very simply. Well, you mustn't do that. You've got to live in a complicated way. You've got to have the kind of car, that identifies you as a person of substance and status and all that. So there's a great problem here in our society. Now, why is there this problem? There's always a very...
Yeah, I mean, wow. He's preaching to me. He's hitting a lot of points on the head. Especially when he talks about going to college because college is stupid, right? As a youth pastor, when I worked as a youth pastor, I dealt with seniors graduating. I felt like a lot of times I might draw a little bit of angst from parents because I wouldn't always recommend going to college. It's just I think trade schools are fantastic and are a much better system of learning, and all that's really necessary. My own personal thing is I graduated and I was like, I'm going to go into ministry. I'm going to go into seminary and become a pastor. But I had to pay bills, so I went to the corporate world. And just on my own merits of success and high school education, I got into training, I got into management, I got into process and policy writing, I got to be a department head of customer service. I saw a lot of success, and I had no college degree. And I would help other people who, when I was in the tech services industry, there was people who were going to college for tech work, and they didn't know certain things that I had just learned in high school, like how to make an Ethernet cable, how to make a patch over cable, how to run cable, because I'd done that, with the fish and cooks, so practical learning and education. And so what you see now on resumes is, bachelor's degree, master's degree, or a lot of times you see now is, equal experience. So it's interesting. I think college is necessary for certain professions, like being a doctor, being a lawyer. You need to go to law school. You need to go to medical school, right? But some people just go to college. They spend a whole bunch of money on business degrees. And why? Because, did you need to pay? Let's say you wanted to start a business. Why would you go $100,000 in debt to start your business? Makes no sense. But people think, before I start a business, I need to get a business degree, right? And so, I'm not one who's positioned rightly to really lecture about this or talk about this, but it's my own experience of what I've seen is like, well, why? And so Alan's hitting a lot of, he's just preaching. And then all this control and social construct, right? We want to sell you things. Our whole society, I've noticed, my experience is that it's built on, like when I turn on I used to go to work every day in the corporate world, and I'd turn on the news first thing, open my homepage and it had news on it. And I felt like every article was telling me what to buy or who to be angry at. Like, that was it. What should I buy and who should I be angry at? I should buy these things and I should be angry at nonconformists, right? Or my anger was being marketed. I'm angry, so I should click on this video, watch some more ads, and go buy some more stuff. So Alan is just preaching right now to me. And I find myself just nodding a lot to what he's saying. On the religious side as well, coming from a organized religion standpoint, I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow when I'm going to give a lecture on a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to the Hebrews, and about how our current day religion, Christianity as it's understood, I think is incorrect. I think we get a lot of things wrong. And I think it's designed around control and controlling people. And I think some people's intentions are good. Some intentions are bad. I've known people who wear the title of executive or senior pastor, and I've worked under them. I've been friends with them, and I see their hearts. They're genuine, but we'll get into that more tomorrow about how Jesus really said, in Scripture, he really said, it's not about organized religion. It's not about righteousness. It's not about control. Jesus said all of that was written to show that you can't do it. You think you're succeeding at this, and God's laughing at you. Your righteousness is filthy rags, is what is written in Isaiah, which is the Old Testament. Your righteousness is filthy rags to God. He's saying that you can't be righteous enough. You can't do it enough. And Jesus says it's all about just Him and just making it easy. And if you don't have to do penance, if you don't have to pay tithes, if you don't have to go to church, if you don't have to worship, then you lose control over people. And so what do we have? We have a system designed to get tithes, participate in corporate worship, right? And so I think these things are good. I think these things are recommended, but I think that they become mandated or shown as necessary when they're not. I'll talk more about that tomorrow, but that's a little sneak peek of what I'll be hitting at tomorrow for kind of the Sunday scriptural review. Let's keep on.
Very inconsiderable minority of these non-joiners or people who check out of the game, but you will find that insecure societies are the most intolerant of those who are non-joiners. They are so unsure of the validity of their game rules that they say everyone must play. Now that's a double bind. You can't say to a person, you must play, because what you're saying is you are required to do something which will be acceptable only if you do it voluntarily. You see? So everyone must play is the rule in the United States. And it's the rule in almost all Republican governments. I mean Republican in the sense of democratic. Because they're very uneasy. Because everybody's responsible. You mean you may try not to be and avoid it and say, oh, let the senators take care of it or the president. But theoretically, everyone's responsible. Now that's terrifying. See, it's all right when you know what's right. There is an aristocracy, there is the clergy, and they know what should be done, and they're used to ruling, you see. But now it's in your hands. You say, well, what are we going to do? Well, I think this way, and you think that way, and he thinks the other way. And so we're all unsettled. And therefore, we become more and more conformist. Individualism, rugged individualism, always leads to conformism, because people get scared.
I just want to say I've seen this over and over and over. And I have a passion for asking people why they believe what they believe. That's what the Soul Ward's all about. We want to learn more. We want to talk to people and learn why they believe what they believe. What I find when I push a lot of people on their beliefs is a conformist attitude, even when they're thinking they are unique. Think of it this way. It used to be that like the Gothic and punk movements were about shirking conformity, right? And so, I'm sure, Bohemian before that too, right? But I'm just speaking to my own experience. It's like people like, I'm going to wear all black and chains and black makeup and all this because, screw everything, screw the world. I'm unique and individual. And what do? They go hang out with groups of people who do the same thing. And a lot of times as a youth person who specialized in youth, I've seen a youth show up and they look normal and everything's, conforming for them. And then they get in with another group of people and before you know it, they're black clothes, chains, chokers and black makeup. Nothing wrong with the style, but they're conforming to a group of people. They're fitting in with a people group. And the people group, that I've seen kind of rallies around the idea that they're nonconformists. They're all conforming to their nonconformity. And they think that they're unique, all of them together as a group. And it's not even a local group, it's a global group. You can go to the UK and see people dressed exactly the same way as you'd see them in the States. And so there's this movement that happens of individualism and nonconformity as people conform to it. And you say, why do you do that? And really a lot of people, they don't know what they believe, and I want to cure that, but they don't know what they believe, and so they fall into a belief system. They do enough research to then fall into an ideology. I meet people. I met a guy who said he fancied himself a Stoic. And interesting, Stoic philosophy. Please go on. And he had done just a little bit of research, liked kind of what he heard, and decided to slap that label on himself and just kind of adhere to their doctrines instead of developing his own doctrine and belief and philosophy. I think there's a lot to learn from smarter people, but I love what Alan is highlighting here, this social game we play. Ender says, if everybody's special, no one is. Syndrome. Speaking of superheroes, I was actually thinking of Loki from the Avengers, where it's the first Avengers. He says, you people were made to be ruled. You crave to be ruled. And I think I think Loki's spitting some mad facts. I think people do crave to be ruled, and they don't even know it. Everyone's looking for a banner to flock to instead of holding up their own banner. Why? As Alan is saying, it's very isolating to hoist your own banner. Even as I'm kind of starting the Soul Ward thing, I can see it's a little ostracizing from other movements because it's, I met a guy the other day and I explained to him what I was doing and he's like, don't do this on your own. He said, there's another guy doing something similar, just fall under his banner and get some funding from him. And I thought, well, I don't want funding from this guy because he's not really doing what I'm doing. It was different. And he's like, it's similar enough, just fall under his banner instead of being your own individual. So, right, wrong, I don't know. I'm just learning from Alan Watts here, but I really like what's being said. Let's keep listening.
And so they herd together, and it compounded with industrial society, mass production, etc. They all wear the same clothes, and they're sensible clothes that don't show the dirt too much. And we get duller and drabber, and with the exception of the Californian Revolution. So the reason for this is, in a way, that democracy as we have tried it started out on the wrong foot. You see, in the scriptures, the Christian scriptures, it says everybody is equal in the sight of God. Now that's a mystical utterance. That means that from the standpoint of God, all people are divine and are playing their true function. And that is something that is true on a certain plane of consciousness. But come down a step and try to apply the mystical insight.
So I want to come from he just stepped into my realm a little bit there, theologically speaking, and I just want to take that moment to jump on that because he kind of stepped into the ring where I play. And what he's referring to this is what theologically we refer to as the Imago Dei, the image of God. And so Christian scripture states that everyone was created in the image of God. Everyone has the divine spark of life in them. According to the Christian tradition stated in Genesis, God breathed life into Adam. And that one breath that was given to the first man, that very same breath went to his children and his children's children and his children's children's children. And so that one breath, that divine breath, is in me, it's in you, it's in everyone. And so when Alan says, therefore, everyone is divine, I would say, yeah, he understands Christian theology pretty well. That's what Christianity would espouse and say, yes, everyone is created in the image of God, everyone's special, everyone is wonderful. The Bible says people are beautifully and wonderfully made, and that their creation, you as an individual, you are breathtaking. Keanu Reeves, you're breathtaking. But anyways, I just want to say, nail on the head and give it a little bit of theological insight. The Imago Dei, Alan is right on the nose with what theology teaches. Let's keep going.
In the practical affairs of everyday life, and what do you get? You get a parody of mysticism. You get the idea not that everybody is equal in the sight of God, but that all people are equally inferior. And that's why all bureaucracies are rude, why the police are rude, and why you are made to wait in lines and are obstreperous income tax individuals and all that sort of person. Because everybody's a crook. Everybody's equally inferior. See, that becomes the parody of democracy. And that kind of society, watch out for it. It turns in a quick click into fascism because of its terror of the outsider. Now, a free and easy society loves outsiders. In fact, it's a little bad for the outsider's integrity because he becomes the holy man, see? And people make salams and give him food and all that. They really take care of the outsider because they know that man is doing for us what we haven't got the guts to do. That outsider who lives up there in the mountain is at the highest peak of human evolution. His consciousness is one with the divine. And great, just there is someone like that around. It makes you feel a little better. He has realized, he knows what it's all about. And so we need a number of those people. Even though they don't join our game, they tell us, you see, what you're doing is only a game. It's okay, I'm not going to condemn you, but it is only a game, and we up on that mountaintop are watching you. We love you, we have compassion for you, and but excuse please, we aren't going to join. So that gives the community great strength, because it tells the government in no uncertain terms that there's...
What's funny is he's referencing this kind of guru kind of person who comes in and refuses to play the game. I just got to call it right on the nose. That's what I aspire to be, is someone who refuses to play the game. So I feel seen now, and I also feel prideful for thinking that I could even possibly be that kind of person. But it's interesting, though, because I think what you'll see in kind of what he's talking about is he says that person's great for the community. And I can't help but my mind go to, when that person shows up, everyone goes, that guy's not playing our game. Let's all follow him. Followers. It's another social game. So I think that's interesting, is if someone does refuse to conform, everyone else conforms with that person's nonconformity. That's very interesting. And so I think what's interesting, though, is he says everyone waits in lines because they're all equally inferior. I just thought, well, what's the alternative, though? Like, survival of the fittest? Like, are we all like, should I walk to the front of the cash register and be like, I'm going to just be ahead of everyone because they're all inferior and I'm better than them? I don't know. Like, what's the opposite society societal norm that we could fall into. And what if I'm opposed? Do I kill that person? Is it survival of the fittest? Like, I don't know. I wish Alan was still alive and that I could have him on and talk to him. But let's keep listening on.
Something more than government. That's why wise kings kept not only priests, but court fools. The court fool is much more effective than the priest, to remind the king that after all he's human. And you know how in Richard II, where the fool is called the antic, the king says, within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his watch. And there the antic sits, scoffing at his state and grinning at his pomp, allowing him a little time to monarchize, be feared, and kill with looks. And then at last comes death, and with a pin bores through his castle wall, and farewell, king. See, always this reminder of the priest or of the antic to the royalty, to the government. You are going to die. You are mortal. Don't give yourself airs and graces as if you were a god. As king, you are only a representative of God. And there is a force, there are domains way, way beyond yours and way, way higher. But it's very difficult for a Republican government to realize that, because it's insecure. And therefore, in our present world, you cannot abandon nationality without the greatest difficulty. People who try to abandon nationality get constantly deported from one place to another. You must belong to this thing, as Thoreau put it. However far into the forests you may go, men will pursue you and compel you to belong to their desperate company of oddfellows.
This concludes Session 10 of Out of Your Mind, Essential Listening from the Alan Watts.
So, Alan gave us a really great talk on the social game, right? The game of fitting in, conformity, non-conformity. Let's transition here to different. Now, so I thought it was really interesting. I think a lot of what he was saying plays in with what I see at large. I think it's a lot of what the Chaz Chop, the little country that popped up within America. Earlier, was that like last year, the year before, and people like we're gonna have like a commune and it's gonna be great. If you look, I think what's interesting though is if you look at those old videos of the Chazzy Chop place, they had a lot of brands, Coke, Coca-Cola, and Gatorade, and these massive manufacturing factories, and they were having trouble growing their own soil, like growing in their own soil, growing their own crops. So it's interesting that Alan picks up a lot of the conformist nature of what we're doing, and then he ties it to kind of nationalism and Republican nations. A lot to think about. Ender writes, if not republics, democratic, what type of nation would we benefit from? And that's a very good question. That's what I'm left with, because we've seen other types of nations in play, and they don't do very well. Now, maybe is it militaristically? Is it because we see with commerce comes a good military, right? If you have the means of production, then you can produce war machines and you can control people. And I do think that there's a lot to be said for war power. When you get to survival of the fittest, when you get to kind of the primal nature of survival, walk softly, carry a big stick, right? How do you protect yourself? How do you stop other nations, other bad guys? How do you not exist at the wills and the whims of others? A human being can only know so much, right? So let's say that you know how to. So Alan Watts is talking about not playing the social game, but like, let's say you're living on your own. Let's say you're a farmer, right? Are you a smith? Are you a blacksmith? Do you know how to make your own plow? Or do you have to go to someone who knows that? Like, so let's say you do know how to smith, and you do know how to farm, right? Like, so then managing crops. And so it's really interesting. What do you actually, like, you need community. I don't think you really can. I think you can survive on your own. I don't think you could prosper on your own. I don't think it's gonna be much of a living. In fact, I think I was watching this YouTube video years ago of these people out in the wilderness and how they exist. And from sun up to sundown, they're hunting, they're catching, they're farming, they're surviving, they're crafting. There's very little time for leisure, for enjoying life. I think that's a thing that you'll see if people do work in a community and they farm together, they smith together, they work together, they live together, they defend each other. Tribalism, right? They're going to have a better existence. They're going to have more downtime. Their children are going to play without worrying about being eaten by wolves or carried off by Vikings. So I do think we learned a lot about conformity from Alan Watts, but I think his thought process, I would like to push it a little bit farther down. See, that's a big thing when it comes to thought-provoking conversations or snippets like this. You hear what Alan has to say, and it sounds really good, and it does sound really good, and he's ringing a lot of truths to me. A lot of stuff that I'm like, yeah, that's really good, that's thought-provoking, that's great. But let's push it farther down. And I like Ender in Exile. I love his stance. Is like, then what, right? It's really easy to say. This is bad. Well, then what's good? And so Alan Watts talks about the nonconformist outsider who comes down and says, "I'm not going to play your game." I think it's worth noting the games we play. I think it's worth knowing the rules of the game and whether you want to play that game or not. What are the rules of our society? What are the games that we play? So I think this was a really good talk from Alan Watts. I think it was a really good points he brought up. I'd love to hear more from him. I can see why he's such a popular person. Kind of evocative of some of the other philosophers we have today, people like Jordan Peterson or some of these other great thinkers we have out there today that are releasing these thought-provoking videos and asking hard questions. But let's just not stop with the questions. Sometimes we ask ourselves, we ask who can ask the deepest question, and we just go, whoa, that's deep. We leave it there. Let's push our thoughts further down the line. Thank you for tuning in to listen to Alan Watts with me. We're going to transition now to a time of questions and a live chat if you guys would like. So if you're on our Discord server, and if you'd like to join our Discord server, you can go to soulwar.org, and then under the connect option, in fact, actually, why don't I just why don't we just transition to this time? So I'll show you guys kind of how to connect and get that going. 1 second here.